Good morning. Well, the weekend is over and the new week starts. New issues. But still, those issues are such, which are quite disconcerting. And the numbers of issues are such a large number that mind boggles which issue to take up. Anyway, at present I've got two issues and I'll discuss one of them today. The second we can take later on. Let's talk of the armed forces. You are aware that Canadian armed forces are highly esteemed forces, highly respected for their professionalism, for their bravery, for their dedication, and especially for their peacekeeping role. The number is a very small number, including the reservists, is about 100,000. And looking at the parameters of the country, this is such a small number that sometimes one feels whether we are living in the Helicon days of the old, when there was peace all around. In fact, there never was peace, but then we always assume that there was peace in the back days, in the days of the Yog, which in Hindu civilization we call the Satya Yuga, that eon, the era of truth and honesty, which was never there, of course, but then, okay, tradition is there. And then looking at our armed forces, and again, there's another difference. Possibly Canada is the only country where all the three arms, Army, Navy, Air Force, are integrated. Now look at the parameters of the country. The country's border is 8,873 kilometers. And the coast, 200,000 kilometers. 200,000 is the coast. Land is 900,000, that means almost 1,000,000 kilometers. And the waterways within the country are 636 million. Sorry, 636 kilometers. Now with this border, with this huge coastline, we need possibly more of armed forces. But then, thanks to the big brother down south, USA, NORAD is there, which looks after our northern defenses. Thanks to Arctic, we have no danger of any attack. Thanks to the good relations with the USA, we don't need army at the borders. Thanks to the situation in the country, till now, we don't need armed forces. The police forces are sufficiently capable enough to look after our safety. Now you would be asking me, then what's the issue? The issue is the absolute incompetency and unprofessional attitude of our government. The Deputy Chief of Defense Services, General Vance, retired a couple of days back. And when he retired, his retirement speech was full of pain and agony. The pain was the lack of sensitivity. And the agony was the undue advantage being taken by the bureaucratic forces and the benign neglect by the political leadership. This is an institution which is extremely professional, as I said earlier, needs specific training, but the bureaucratic interference is undermining the professionalism. And the general, when he was retiring, was quite concerned about it. Secondly, when an institution is highly professionalized, it needs professional thinking rather than voting. The step of the government of Canada in holding consultations for adopting a defense strategy is, to say the least, incomprehensible and in reality something which is detestable. You do not run an army, you do not run the defense services by referendum. It has to be a committee of the strategists, not a committee of the civilians, but the people who have some understanding or a great understanding of war and defense. The strategy formulation is a highly developed skill which very few people have. And here is our government releases an advertisement that a consultation starts, and then the ministers go from one place to another, holding talks to the people, having town halls, as if those town halls would decide the issue. Whether the issue of the mines or the issue of IEDs, whether it's the issue of having an icebreaker or issue of having a destroyer, whether to have a C-18 or whether to have F-35, whether to have drones capable of firing or having drones only for the surveillance. All these issues are not a matter of drawing room discussion, nor are they a matter of a public debate. Military intelligence and military strategy is a highly professionalized thing, and it is something to be ruminated in subterranean regions rather than on the televisions. But then possibly our leaders love sound bites as well as the laser lights of the camera being focused on them. And they then utter inanities. Political leadership is supposed to form a policy that this is what we want and then leave the army to do it. I remember 1971, it was April. The Bangladesh crisis had started and Madam Gandhi called Manekshaw that our job and gave the job. And Manekshaw said one thing. I was there and Manekshaw said, "Ma'am, I'll deliver the results. But I want something, some non-interference and a free hand." She called the three ministers, agriculture, because of the food issues, transport, railway minister, and the home minister, and directed whatever general wants, give without any hesitation. I don't want a delay. And the result was liberation of a country and the creation of a new country, and the historically largest arrest of the prisoners of war. Over 100,000 prisoners of war were taken in a very professional manner. The civilians are protected in a very professional manner. The whole war was fought in the Situation Room, but the politicians had no role to play in that. Once the political leadership had given, but then of course there was a liaison, and we were 4 people who were liaisoning with the defense so that their needs are immediately met. And the terms are very clear. This has to be done, period. How the army does it is their job, not the job of the public consultation. And that is what is required. And that's what happened in the Second World War. When Winston Churchill called General Montgomery and said, I want results. On the other side, when Hitler started interfering with General Rommel, the largest army, 5th Panzer Division, was rooted in Africa, North Africa. And the Panjers were just annihilated. And General Rommel was one of the best generals ever born. But the political interference undermined his creativity, his capacity, and his capability. And that's what's happening here in Canada. The Canadian leadership assumes that since they have a former army officer as the defense minister, they know everything. Yes, that's a positive thing. A professional has some definite better insight than the others. But the very process of public consultation undermines the trust of the defense services and undermines the professional attitudes. At the same time, there's another issue, and that is a bureaucratic interference. Bureaucracy is meant to serve and carry out the directions, not to issue orders and directions. However, the world over, whether it's Canada or India, whether it's USA or anywhere, is a bureaucracy which is dictating, which it must not. The policy must be created by the political leadership. It must be implemented by the bureaucracy without any editorializing. They have absolutely no business in anything else except to carry it out. Of course, it's their responsibility to advise. They have to advise the political leadership about the various parameters and the various aspects and the subtleties which they understand. And let me tell you, having been a part of the bureaucracy for a long time, I know it. Bureaucracy is extremely useful, provided it is used in a manner which is good, provided it is used as a tool. But the moment the tool becomes blunted, our tool becomes too sharp, or the handler cannot handle it, that is definitely not a good thing. So bureaucracy's interference is the biggest burden for any professional organization. And that's why we say the bureaucracy is to aid and assist, not to oversee, not to monitor. Monitoring is to be done by a professional body, and there can be professional body of the officers, senior, capable officers of the defense services themselves. That monitoring body, the Chief Defense College, you can call it the Defense Committee, can be headed by a civilian, by the Defense Minister, but undue interference is definitely not acceptable. Now comes the second thing. For the last 25 years, the issue of $1.2 billion has been cropping up, and no action has ever been taken. The army starved for funds. The F-35, which the Harper government wanted to buy, and for which we spent $35 million. At that time, Justin Trudeau had said, it's of no use. It will never see the light. It will never even fly. And today, it is a major aircraft of the US Air Force. Canada has spent the money, and the Liberal government has released $35 million because of the commitments. But they have not taken advantage of that. Had they been more sensible, they should have said, look here, we have paid $35 million, so we want our share, and they would have agreed. But, there is certain myopia, certain short-sightedness, lack of hindsight and the lack of the foresight that is afflicting this government. This myopic vision is destroying the integrity of the defense services. Now look to our naval. With a huge million kilometers, which you have got to look into and look after. We have about 8 destroyers. Our major destroyers and ships like Halifax are aging. They have lived past their age. But are we changing them? Our submarines are practically not existent. We don't have even a single nuclear submarine. And today is the age of submarines. We do not have an icebreaker. We have Northern Arctic and we need an icebreaker. We don't have that. Our ships are relics. I have been to Halifax. I posted my picture with the defense services on the Halifax. And I was amazed that Canada, which assumes and boasts of its innovative engineering and its naval defense, should have such a bucket as its major flagship. Compare it with the Chinese army and where you are. So we need to take a comprehensive look. When I say need, I mean from the policy point of view, the government has to take a comprehensive view of the world situation, of the domestic situation, and putting it in a perspective, give it to the army. Look here, this is our aim. And this is our budget. Of course, budgetary constraints are there. And then leave it to the army to come up with a plan how to go ahead and accept that plan and implement it. That is the need of the hour. You know, when the generals get frustrated, when the generals get disappointed, when the generals get disheartened, that disappointment flows down and leads to the demoralization of the forces. This demoralization is suicidal for the country. This frustration is inimical to the interests of the country. This burning resentment is something very pernicious and must be avoided. But are our mandarins sitting in Ottawa listening? Or is the press doing something? No. Because the press and the media is just like lapdogs trying to look to the authorities for some favors, some rewards, or to show their loyalty, they will do what the government wants to do. But the political thinkers must come together. The strategists must sit together and say, okay, do whatever you want. I have no problem with that. But let our greatest institutions, like the defense, the judiciary, let them at least be spared the onslaught of the vicious interference. The vicious interference that is suicidal for the nation. That is absolutely unacceptable. Can you call on your MP and tell him to do something? Can you call on your ministers and tell them, okay, leave the institutions aside, let them work professionally and let's hope for the best. Till that time, I think we can only wait with bated breath. Thank you.